Call to order, regular meeting, why is it so loud? Of the Board of Commissioners, December 19th at 5:15.
Commissioner Ernst? Commissioner Engel?
Here.
Commissioner Rollins?
Here.
Commissioner Vogelsang? Commissioner Wright?
Here. Any changes to the agenda? Nope. Any public requests? Go ahead. Yep.
Thank you. I'm Gabriel Banfi, 2121 North Ocean Boulevard, Boca Raton. I come here because of the development of Ocean Strand. And I've noticed that on the southwest corner of the parcel being developed, there is a brush, overgrowth that contains a number of very valuable species, especially anywhere from 10 to 15 native Florida palm trees. And the reason I come here, I don't know whether the development consults a botanist, professional botanist, but the point is that while developing the trail, the walking portion, heavy machinery did away with a couple of these very valuable native palm trees. So in this other group, I come here to propose that the commission send someone to clean up that portion. It's the one next to Boca Towers and next to A1A Trail or sidewalk. And isolate these native valuable pieces of nature and clean up the overbrush. I don't know, maybe I'm talking of very high expense. I don't know how much it would cost. I would even volunteer to clean up if you give me the tools. But this is primarily what I'm here for. Thank you.
Mr. Banfi, just so you know, we do have a plan that's being put together, a maintenance plan out there, and we'll definitely add that section to make sure that they review it with the city who does all that and go through there. So appreciate that. But we are putting together a maintenance plan to keep all that overgrowth from happening and keep all the beautiful stuff showing.
My name is Harold Chaffee, 6200 Northwest 2nd Avenue. I just wanted to wish everybody a happy Hanukkah and a Merry Christmas. And thank you very much for everything that you're doing. All right.
Happy holidays to you too. I think I see you more than my parents. Anybody else? No, anybody online? No. We'll close public request and we'll do approval of the minutes of the previous board meeting held on December 5th. Joanne?
Approve.
Joanne.
Commissioner Ernst? Commissioner Engel? Rollins? Commissioner Vogelsang? Commissioner Wright? Motion passes.
Okay, regular business. First item is the Sugar Sand Park roof bid results.
Commissioners, on page 5 of your agenda packets is a listing. We had 5 bids back for the Sugar Sand Park roof project. We are recommending awarding that contract to Advanced Roofing. The bid amount was $1,639,586. And we have Mr. Jorge Cervantes here from CGA to answer any questions. Mr. Cervantes, if you'll step up there and turn on the microphone?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jorge Cervantes, representing Caballero Girano and Associates.
This question is for Jacob. I mean, can we go through a third party to award an RFP type business?
Yeah, just, thank you, Commissioner. Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Just a couple observations on this item. So the district has engaged CGA as a consultant to help with the bid evaluation process. So we went out to bid for the roof replacement project, and as Brianne indicated, there were a number of responses, which were all reviewed and vetted by Calvin Giordano, who is our retained consultant. They've made a recommendation, which is included in your backup. You'll notice that the recommendation made by the consultant was not for the lowest bidder, it was actually for the second of the low bidders for the reasons set forth in their analysis. The bid specifications actually provide an award by the board to the most responsive, responsible bidder, and the determination by the board that an award to that particular vendor would be in the district's best interests and most advantageous to the district. Important to note that we're not required to engage the lowest bidder, but the most responsive and responsible bidder. And for the reasons set forth in their analysis, which is included in your backup, our professional consultant has made the determination to award to, I believe it was, which was the second one was Advance, correct, Advance Roofing.
I remember reading that there was, did we make calls on there? And we got good responses back on, yeah, okay. Anybody have any more questions?
Question so much as a statement. It's shows where the roofing industry is in the spread. Is this being influenced by any stretch with the supply chain issues and what's happening on the West Coast with all the roofers being drawn to that area and us being limited in choices over here and paying for a little extra because of that?
No, this is mainly based on today's materials, capability to get the materials delivered and the costs that have been increased due to, after COVID and all the supplies of equipment. As you know, there is a lot of lack of materials to be able to supply to different vendors and all the stuff on it. So it brings the cost of the materials higher, and we wanted, check them all out, and they were very much within what it is industry standard right now.
So the materials themselves are met the bid specifications.
Yes.
Because we're looking for a quality metal roof.
Yes. Yeah,
and
they meet
that-
all the specifications that we put on our construction documents for the bids, and Advanced Roofing was the ones that we found that met all the requirements and made all the addendums that we issue as a part of the bidding process on it, and that's why we suggested that this company would be your best interest on providing the construction of the reroofing of the sandbar.
And thank you for that information. Is there any, I know enough about roofing just to be dangerous, but is there anything extra there that would improve the quality of the roof that might be available that wasn't in the bid specs? Or, because I don't recall seeing the bid specs, and if there's anything that could improve the quality of the roof over and above what we bid, or in your opinion, this is the best product and the best.
This is probably one of the best products that you can get. I mean, excuse me, of course, there is always an improvement, okay? But going to the improvement, it will be an additional cost to the project that we foreseen that would not be more advantage, excuse me, more advantage to you guys for the money. So metal roofing got a 25-year warranty on it, okay, which is better than concrete roof. This is one of the reasons why we decided to go with a metal metal roofing for the re-roofing on it, and it was more advantage for you guys, this type of roof. And also the type of material, the underlayment that we specify is a self-healing type of material, which means that every time that you put a screw on, it will seal back in it, and instead of doing another type of underlayments on it. So we provide probably one of the best specifications for the cost that you can put on that roof.
Did that include a secondary water resistant underneath it, or with the self-sealing that you're?
That's the
talking-
underlayment, yes, sir.
Okay, so it does have the secondary water resistance.
Yes, yes, you got the metal roof, they got underlayment, which is the one that's self-healing on it, and then you got the in this case will be plywood or the other material that you use for it.
And so if there were anything extra that you would recommend, you mentioned there are some other things that were not cost efficient, what would those be?
What they call a modified roof, which literally you can put a roof without having to put the metal roof. But that's mainly used like for a flat roof where, you got a flat roof, you don't have to put anything extra on it. And the metal roof or concrete roof will be more like a decorative type of material to be put in place. Beyond that, we don't foresee anything more advantage for you guys to put in place.
This is just curiosity. I know metal roofs come in different colors. What
Yes.
color are we talking about on this roof?
I believe we're trying to match the same color that we have before, which is kind of greenish looking color.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
To that, Advanced Roofing actually did the roof at the municipal services building, and the city spoke very highly of the work that they did as well.
One question, how come they don't have a schedule? They didn't provide a schedule?
The only reason that we can foresee that they didn't have a schedule is because, like I said, delivery material is very
Up in the air?
up in the air now. Really, I didn't want to say those words, but yeah, it is. So once they have contracts, they're gonna start to talk to the material people and see what kind of deadlines they can give us
Okay,
for, as you're aware, we did these renovations for the tennis courts in here.
mhm,
And they, lighting manufacturer, for example, they give us a deadline of, October, and then fixtures just come out December.
okay,
So which gonna also create a problem of supply due to the West Coast.
okay, so once we have a contract with them, we might be able to pin
Pinpoint
down
it
something
more,
a
yes.
little bit closer, okay,
Yes, yes.
okay. Yeah,
But of
Chief.
course, we'll review that front in your behalf, and we can push a little more,
Right.
to make it quicker. That will be something that we will
okay.
suggest.
We've been talking about installing solar panels. Will this roof be able to accommodate solar panels without major modification?
Yes, sir. During the re-roofing process of creating the construction document, we were in conjunction, we were talking to Melissa regarding the possibility to provide new solar panels on the roof. So the specification for this roof and the type of seams that we've been specified will allow to put without any penetration clamps to be able to sustain the solar panels. And at the same time, we provided sleeves on the roof. So you don't have to do any penetration. It's just a cap, take it out, put all your wires in and reseal it back again. So all that has been part of the process for the re-roofing. We thought about that ahead of schedule. Yes, sir.
Said that there is a 25-year warranty, but how long will the roof last in best case scenario?
I have seen metal roof 35 years. If, it's just properly maintained, which means, you have a little, an area that is starting to oxidize, clean it up, repaint it and treat it, that, it will last you for a long time.
Have to go back and look at to see if it's oxidizing.
You're gonna see it when you see it from the outside, because normally until the paint, that coating that they have doesn't peel off, you're gonna see it. You will able to see it, but I would recommend that at least every 10 years, just to get a quick look on it to see, if you find any seams that it might be loose a little bit and stuff like that.
you. My question though is kind of tied into what Bob was saying about what you could do. And just for clarification,
Mhm.
the current roof that is there is a metal roof and complete metal roof. And
No, it's a combination of a concrete tile with metal roof. The
okay.
front portion is metal, kind of greenish looking.
Yep,
The concrete tile is kind of reddish looking on the back, kind of
okay.
in desert on the high areas. And we're replacing everything to be metal.
And so the flat areas that are currently there, is that a modified?
That's
base?
kind of a modified roof on it, yes.
And so the new roof will be metal? Or is it gonna be?
No,
modified?
that we're gonna maintain the same. You can put metal roof on flat areas.
Okay, so,
So you're gonna have, modified roof with mops and a built up on it.
so on going back to the question that Bob, Mr. Commissioner Rollins asked was, are you adding an epoxy finish on top of that modified or not?
There is not an epoxy finish that you apply to any flat roofs. Okay, what you do is this type of roof that you have is the insulation is literally attached to the roof. So in order to create a new roof, we're gonna have to replace completely all the insulation and take all the
layers.
built up roof. Yes.
Correct.
So we're gonna have to remove it and put a new one in. Protection is gonna be provided, and it's was part of the den. And one of the questions from debaters, if that was required, and they say yes, as part of the construction documents, that all the underneath of those roofs needs to be protected, or including any or areas of the roofs when they're being replaced. You do not put epoxy on it. Okay, epoxy is a very hard component on it. If you seal the roof and you don't let it breathe, any type of wet that it gets trapped underneath, it will create issues later on your roof. So you always need to let it breathe a little bit. That's why a lot of the roof is built up, which is actually breathing material.
I'm puzzled by that only because the county, the school district does a modified. And then they
The
do
flat
like
roof.
an epoxy or it's a white finish on top of all of that.
Yes,
Elastomeric
it's an
paint?
elastomeric,
elastomeric.
but
I think it's different than
yeah,
epoxy
it's
though.
a different epoxy, elastomeric, but even with elastomeric, that's a 3M product.
Yep.
That they've been, marketing. There is a good thing and bad thing. The bad thing is back again, the roof has to be 100% dry.
Correct.
If it's not 100% dry and you apply this product, it's gonna trap some moisture, which eventually will create issues on your roof, including mold.
Mhm.
And that's something that you do not want to see. Since we're doing a brand new roof, we don't foresee why you would like to put that type of a product on it. Your roof is gonna be brand new, it's gonna be sealed properly, and if it pitched properly, you should have a long longevity on those roofs.
I think the elastomeric is useful when it comes to like the end of the life expectancy of a roof to kind of
If you
extend
want to
it, maybe.
extend a little bit on it, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
let's extend a little bit instead of spending a lot of money. I have seen also elastomeric in use on the exterior walls of the building, which it works good on a way. You got an issue with the building that it's breathing too much air, create moisture, then it seals it better and stuff like that. I particularly put elastomeric in my house which it give me an extra insulation on it because, it give you some extra insulations on your components on it.
So, but elastomeric is an option that could be it's better to, I mean, I understand what you're saying.
Mhm.
I'm roughly familiar with it from a building that I work in.
Mhm.
And it's 310,000 square feet. And so
Mhm.
it went through its life, but there's a lot of bubbling, a lot of deterioration over time. But if it had the elastomeric, I get it wrong, elastomeric is on there, I mean, it reduces the heat absorbed on that roof significantly. And the likelihood of you getting the bubbles and all the air pockets and stuff like that is far better. for the long
Well,
run.
yes and no. And I know what you're saying about the heat. The roofs, a lighter color, you give you more reflection, which it means attract less heat. A darker color roof attracts more heat, which it also transmit more inside. The elastomeric is normally about whitish looking on it, unless some put some pigmentation on it to make it a little different colors on it. But that's pretty much what elastomeric does. It's just going to give you a better reflection on the roof than because of the color than it's a darker roof. But like I said, that's just mainly to extend the life expectancy of a roof. And instead of, if the roof is pretty much got the life expectancy on it, it's very more recommended to get a brand new roof. Now, you want to extend it, yeah, put elastomeric on it, but not in a brand new roof.
Not on the brand new roof. I guess I would say whatever they're building at the new schools is what we want to do. So, I mean, it'd be nice if we check with the standard of the Palm Beach school system. They built 2 new schools in the area. And if they have that elastomeric roof, I think we should seriously consider doing it at the same time. So that would be my only thought. So,
Well, I
When I-
mean, you can do it on the flat roofs, but not on the metal roofs.
not on the metal roofs, of
Okay.
course, I'm just talking about the flat roof
Yeah.
areas. So without seeing the specifications or seeing the actual bids, that would be my only 2 cents on the whole thing.
Seen a number of these types of roofs with the white ceiling on it. And I do a lot of mid-rise condominium associations.
Mhm.
And some of these products are not approved by our companies for windstorm rating. Simply because what they're doing is they're coating over the underlayment. They're not taking it down to the decking. In the process that we're talking about with the re-roofing, we're taking it down to the decking. Is that correct?
Yes, yes,
So
sir.
removing all the old material, which is preferable. And in some cases, you see these advertisements on TV where they're spraying out this material over wide areas. It is over a bad roof. And so obviously it's not going to have the windstorm rating that the insurance companies are wanting. Now, it could be differently on the new, what the school board's doing. I don't have any idea about the product they're putting down. But if it's a new building, obviously it's built up over the decking with some type of insulation.
Yes.
And then a polyester seamless, or I don't know whether it's a spray. And the ones that I've seen that have been approved, the ones where they roll them out in sheets and then seat heal the sheets between each other. So how big of an area are we talking about that's a flat roof over at?
I would say you probably have about 15%, no more than that. It's very small amount of roof. The only roofing that you have in there is mainly just to walk or get access to the areas of the roof where you have, more metal and concrete roof, which is the majority on it. It's mainly like a pathway, you want to call it, and also to be able to access to the skylights that you have. That's pretty much all access that you have in there for flat roofs. There's not a lot of it.
So for that square footage, and you're talking about the metal roofs lasting 25 years. If you put down this coating, epoxy coating,
Mhm.
Does that extend it out? And how long is the cost equivalent sufficient for us to go spend the extra money to do that?
Okay, that is something I will have to check for you to see how much will be the extra to put the elastomeric on top of it. But bear in mind that elastomeric, if it ever have a crack, it will trap water. And that's what I'm saying. It's a component, it's a type of material that is think about a plastic bag. You got a hole on it, the water's gonna get in there, it's not gonna be able to breathe out. So, I mean, I can give you really a good answer on how much extra it's gonna give you on it. Because like I said, that product's mainly used to extend the life expectancy of an existing roof.
So we're not sure about how much longer it would extend the life though, but there is some risk with that membrane getting cracked from the heat or from some other form or another, people walking on it.
Yes, every time, that's one of these things that, one of the main causes of a roof to start leaking is when people walk on it. So the lesser you can have access to the roof and, of course, you're gonna have to have some maintenance that needs to be done. And, but the less that people works on the roof, the less likely you're gonna have the materials get.
Is the transit from the ground to different skylights or whatever for maintenance, does it cross this flat roof?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, it does. The flat roof is like I say, it's you corridor, you want to call it that way,
Okay.
to get access to the different sections of the roof.
All right. Thank you. Do we need a motion on this to approve this? I'll make a motion that we approve the recommendation of our consultant to go with Advanced Roofing in the amount of $1,639,056.
Okay, Joanne?
Ernst? Commissioner Engel?
Yes.
Commissioner Vogelsang? Commissioner Wright? Motion passes.
Jorge.
Thank you very much.
Okay, number 2, the Boca Chica bond.
Commissioners, at our last meeting, we talked about getting the bond documents from the city as it relates to the Boca Chica property, and we did get those documents. I'm going to turn this over to Jacob.
Thank you, Brianne. So as Brianne indicated, since the last meeting, we've received a document package from the city that includes all of the pertinent documents regarding the Boca Chica bond transaction. And we had begun to review all of that, and in conjunction with our review, with the board's permission, having consulted with Brianne, we'd like to actually engage bond counsel for the district to assist with an analysis of that. When the bonds were initially issued by the city had their own separate bond counsel who facilitated the transaction on their behalf. We've since spoken to Jolinda Herring of the Bryant Miller Olive law firm, it's a firm that we work with in a number of our municipal venues. And with the board's concurrence, we'd like to engage Ms. Herring to assist with an analysis to essentially examine the documents in their entirety in conjunction with the interlocal agreement, the AGO that we previously received, to look at possible P3 options as they might relate to a 501c3 or related entity, to look at any issues as it relates to the district and its relationship with the city, specifically regarding the transaction, and any particular issues that may relate to the future development, particularly of the west side. But to the extent that they address the east side as well, we'd have the analysis cover the entire property. But we have begun our review. We'd like to move to the second layer and have bond counsel look at that as well and prepare their own separate opinion as it relates to all of the different opportunities with regards to the development, particularly of the west side. Again, it's a fairly complex transaction, and we wanted to have the benefit of bond counsel on our behalf, knowing that the city had that opportunity when the transaction initially occurred, and they took ownership of the west side. So that's where we stand as it relates today. We've begun to have some very preliminary conversations with Ms. Herring along with Brianne, but we didn't want to move that process forward without having brought it to the board and get your input and concurrence as it relates to that approach.
Anybody have any?
Mhm.
Susie?
Mhm.
Go ahead, Bob.
Question, Jake, would be our enabling legislation. I think we've talked about this enough about the P3s and
Yes.
whether or not we can do those and finding some creative way to do that. But I don't know about doing anything on the east side because we have complete authority to do what we want to do, subject to permitting on that.
Correct.
So I don't know that there's any value for them looking at that portion,
Mhm.
But certainly on the west side. And I know, some of the issues I have with the west side is the portion of the agreement that says approval may not be, I forget the exact terminology, but
Unreasonably withheld.
unreasonably withheld. Thank you very much for that. And I don't think that's been the case. I think we've been played along. Had we still had Mayor Haney, who got us into this deal, we may have been in a little bit better position to have moved forward with this rather than, I know this is the elephant in the room that we're talking about, but I think the conversation might have gone a little bit more genteel than the way it has, primarily because we were doing this in good faith. I don't know that anybody was on the commission here when we did this, but were you, Sue? Yeah, when the project was bought. Did? Well, well, the issue really is, we've been toyed with, to be quite honestly. But if we can find a niche in this area from a bond standpoint, and I don't think that you would recommend it and they would anticipate, would want us to waste our money unnecessarily in evaluating
Correct.
this.
Correct,
And
yes.
I'm all about that, so long as we have a better than a 50-50 chance of making this happen.
Yeah, well, and again, the focus clearly would be on the west side and the bond impacts on the entire development of the property. With regards to our charter and enabling legislation, we know there's nothing in there that prohibits a P3 relationship. The key factor is going to be how that relationship would ultimately be structured. And one of the things we would ask bond counsel to look at is specific our opportunities to partner with a third party, be it a nonprofit or a for-profit entity, short of conveying or leasing any of that property, knowing that's a limitation under our charter, but to get a better sense as to what impacts the bonds may have on those potential 3P opportunities. But again, the focus would be on the west side, clearly, and we wouldn't want to limit us in any way as it relates to our charter language, just knowing that our restriction would be conveying, dedicating, or leasing that property. But as it relates to any bond implications and what we could and couldn't do, and any tax implications as it relates to the bonds and the development, those are the things we would ask bond counsel to focus on.
What are we looking at in terms of projected costs for something like this?
You know, we started that conversation. We have not received an hourly rate from Ms. Herring and her firm, but presumably it would be no more than our hourly rates. It would be the same rate as if we were doing the work. We would obviously stand down so as not to duplicate efforts and let Ms. Herring and her team handle that project.
Okay, thank you.
My concern is, it seems like every time we look at an agreement with the city that we've had that has been previously negotiated, there seems to be surprise. Surprise. The surprise that we got, and it was a good surprise when we found out the charter prohibited us from conveying property in any way, shape, manner, or form. But I want to make sure that, for example, if we put plans forward for a P3 to develop a piece or a whole of the west side, that there are no penalties that are going to pop up all of a sudden and bite us in the rear end. And now all of us, we're looking at, well, now can we really do this? Which leads to my next question. If there are such penalties, can these things be renegotiated with the city?
Well, the answer is it depends, but that would be one of the things we would ask bond counsel to look at. Remember, because not only is there the city, there's also the bond holders. And when they, purchase municipal bonds, they're purchasing subject to certain terms that are in those closing documents. So the ability to renegotiate may be somewhat limited, but much like you, Commissioner, we don't want there to be any surprises when we approach the city. And the city has had the benefit of bond counsel in essentially facilitating the transaction. We want to make sure we have that value as well as we move forward with any future development plans.
One other question about how long of a period of time do you think this process will take?
I don't want to speak for Ms. Herring. We'd certainly like to have something within the first month of the new year. We did have a conversation with her earlier today just to open the door preliminarily, subject to any decision that was made this evening. But if the board was in agreement, we would forward all the pertinent documents to her by tomorrow morning. She'd begin her analysis. Obviously, we have the holidays coming up, but hopefully by the early part of January or shortly thereafter, we'd have something more formal from her.
I mean,
Would Ms. Herring's firm work with the city's bond counsel who drew up the original documents?
The need, I think that they would certainly reach out preliminarily. I think that they would review all the documents that we currently have to get a better sense as to what our opportunities are. But if there was a need to reach out to the city's bond counsel, who we do know and have relationships with, I'm certain they would make that call.
possibly if we got into a situation where we were negotiating with a P3 and all of a sudden, after we've gone through this vetting process with Ms. Herring's company and the city comes back and says, no, you can't do that. Is there any liability on the part of of Ms. Herring's firm?
Well, no, I mean, again, I think that they would obviously conduct their analysis in good faith from a liability standpoint. I'm not sure that I see any potential exposure there, but without knowing what disagreement may arise between their analysis and the city's bond council's analysis, I guess we'd have to cross that bridge once we saw the nature of that disagreement. But again, without knowing what their analysis will reveal, it's a little hard to anticipate some friction with the city and what their council previously opined to.
You direct her to, to just flat out say, hey, do you see any conflicts?
No, I think what we would do, and we would certainly schedule a call with Ms. Herring and with Brienne to talk through the various potential development options that the board has been considering to see if she saw any concerns or potential conflicts, red flags with any of those potential development options. We'd ask her to look at the tax implications, the P3 implications, a couple of the issues we've been discussing in our recent meetings, just to make sure that when we do approach the city, as Commissioner Engel said, there would be no surprises.
Okay, just a couple thoughts. First is the property is defined in the agreements is the 141 acres that is the west of
Correct.
Second Avenue. It's very clearly defined. Number two is the agreements are very keen on talking about the tax exempt status of the bonds. And the purpose here is not to defeat the tax exempt status of those bonds. So, and the agreements are also very clear about the risk of the bonds becoming taxable for any reason for non-public. The purpose of this property is recreation. I think very well defined is for recreation and may include golf. I think public and recreation purposes. So it's really very well defined in its overall scope. And there's a heavy emphasis on the keeping and maintaining the tax exempt status no matter what. So looking at the bonds is nice, but I think it would be beneficial to limit what you're looking at because it is a lot of documents. And you could run up a very big legal bill real fast on the whole thing. So there's a little bit of a question of, well, what do we have to do? And fortunately, our agreements tell us what we need to do. Our agreements tell us that we need to present to the city an improvement plan, conceptual plan. It says it has to have a written description with the proposed, facts of each component, has the location identified and a funding plan. And when you're done with that, you have to get a city resolution. And that's how you get this thing moving to the next step of things. The question is, do you want to do this now? Or do you want to do something later? We haven't gotten to those steps. And the question is, who's really going to do this? And so if you're going to go to a public-private partnership to do all these things, which is a possibility, then you're introducing, probably a for-profit, or whether they're going to do this P3 thing or not, we don't know. In the case of anything that is for-profit using any portion of that property, I think it's pretty clear that that could jeopardize the tax exempt nature of the bonds. So you got to ask yourself, is someone going to do something for free? I don't know. I'm not sure that that is really going to work. I think you're threading a very thin line on this whole process when maybe we need to have our proposal complete with what we want to do and come back to the city. The city is going to get their own counsel and we pay for it. So that's in the agreements too. Anything that is going to be submitted has to go through council for review, so it doesn't jeopardize the tax exempt nature. And we'll have to present that, and the city's council will have to look at that and see if they agree with it or not. And then it comes back to a decision by them if they want to do it. So yes, Steve, there are a lot of things that could say no. I'm not sure I would spend a lot of money on it, just because I think the answer is gonna be, not what we want to hear. So, the question is, do you have a proposal you really want? Is this the time to do this now? Or do you want to do something, wait until we get all our plans later, together, and then go to the city with that? The other thing I would tell you that is very lengthy in the documents, and I don't, you had to reread these things to look at, is what they call a non-appropriation event. And the non-appropriation event is basically, we don't appropriate funds for the bonds, and that triggers the city a 5-day notice, and basically they take the property. It's a very clean out for them to take the property. So if you decided we didn't want to appropriate for these funds, they would take the west side immediately, and then they're running with it. So it's a clean out for them to take a proposal and move forward with it. And from there, you could do your own interlocal agreement to do something else, but they would assume complete title and control of it, and we would be done with the bond. That's the way I read it.
A lot of information.
It is a lot of.
So, but my thoughts here, are like, why would we go ahead with more design plans before we even know if we can do the P3s on the west side? Isn't that important to know before we can move ahead with the design of the property and spend more money on it?
I think was addressed mostly from what can we as our charter do in the district? The next step is does the bonds allow for it? And so, yep, so we could do that. I guess a lot of it depends on, be very specific that that's what you want to do then when you're talking to the attorney. I just narrow the scope of what you're doing. Don't give them, thousands of pages of documents. There's a lot of
No,
documents.
I mean, what else? That's what we're looking for,
Yeah.
right?
Underlying question. Yeah.
Based on the proposal that I went to city council with, that they gave me a thumbs up for and said, move forward.
Yep.
Now we can say, well, we have possibilities for a P3 on the west side. Is that a possibility now? According to the bonds that we have, right? So before we go ahead and do design on anything or go out for RFP on anything, we should know whether we can actually do the P3 on the west side, right?
Madam Chair, it's a chicken or egg type situation. It depends what.
I mean,
your
that makes
P3
sense
is.
to me. And I feel like if we give the bond attorney, a time frame of 30 days and cap it at $5,000, let's just get it done as quickly as possible. That way we know, and then we can move forward from there. Yes.
As far as the P3 people go, they're all sitting on ready, I think. And they have money that they could or have already invested in, the design process or whatever. And I think that they would be appreciative to know whether they can go forward with this or not.
Right. I mean, it would be kind of silly us to put RFP out for P3s, then put all that work forward and money, and then submit RFP, and then we do use the bond attorney and find out, oh, by the way, we can't do it. Right. So to me, it makes sense to do this now, cap it at 30 days, get it done.
Make the motion to allow our council to engage a bond attorney with the proviso that the term is capped at 30 days and the expense is capped at $5,000.
If I may, just regards to the 30 days, knowing that we're just coming up into the holidays, I don't want to, obviously hamstring their ability to do the work, not knowing what their schedules are over the next 2 weeks. Could we extend that through January so they at least have the benefit of the month of January to complete that work?
January 31st.
Yeah, we could start the 30-day clock ticking at January 3rd. And then give them 30 days from there. I have no problem with that.
Make sure
Discussion?
that I got it clear so do it,
Huh? Starting at January 3rd, so it goes through February 3rd.
finish by January 31st, on or before. January
Oh, I thought he
31st.
said,
This is 30 days. So that would bring us
You're saying
to our first February meeting,
first February meeting,
right?
which is when?
Which is The second.
February 3rd.
Third.
Perfect. Okay. February 3rd. Well, they'll need time to look at it, right? So we'll make it February 3rd, and that gives review time. Yeah, okay. Good.
I would, February 3rd, on or before February 3rd. And the other suggestion would be is that they specifically look in the bond documents for a piece 3 concept that, and you're gonna have to define that for them, what we've looked at in light of our
So
documentation.
really, just so I'm clear to narrow the scope, the issue in question really is whether the bonds allow for the P3 development of the west side.
If it triggers a taxable event of the
Mhm.
bonds.
Yes, yes. And so we've already had a second, right? Now discussion.
You on the P3. I keep going back to our enabling legislation is what we're able to do and some,
Yeah.
and I've heard we can be creative, but I haven't really gotten comfortable and cozied up to the fact that we can do the P3.
Sure. And what I can do also, you may recall, Commissioner, about a year ago, we prepared a pretty detailed legal memorandum
Yeah.
analyzing the statute, which breaks down the public-private partnership process, which we can certainly recirculate. So P3s contemplate one of two things, either a solicited or an unsolicited proposal. And there are a number of different qualified projects that are eligible for a P3, and rec projects are included within that umbrella of potential opportunities. If and when the district were to go out for a P3 or receive an unsolicited proposal, we would need to put together a bid specification, a competitive procurement package, an RFP or an RFQ, which essentially outlines the nature of the project that we're looking to develop. And any interested parties would be able to submit a proposal consistent with the specifications that we put on the street. And then we would have the ability to evaluate whether or not we wanted to enter into a public-private partnership with one of those potential developers. We know under our charter, we're limited in our ability to convey or lease property. We also prepared an analysis, earlier in the year as it relates to the different opportunities that might be available, whether it's a concessionaire agreement, a management agreement, some kind of operator agreement, which we could enter into with a third party, either a for-profit or a not-for-profit entity. All three of those different types of agreements could be structured in such a way to create a partnership relationship that falls short of a conveyance or a dedication of real property, which we know is a limit under our charter. So then there are a number of different ways that we could structure this relationship. We don't know which one of those would work for our private partner, whoever that ultimately was. They may have some thoughts as it relates to what might work best for them, whether it was an operator's agreement or a concessionaire agreement. We've worked with those models a number of times over the years, and they've, we've seen them work and be beneficial both for the public agency and for the private partner as it relates to those particular projects. The statute lays out a very detailed process when it comes to public-private partnerships, but a key component of that process is a competitive solicitation, as I said. So any interested party will have the opportunity to submit a proposal based on specifications that we put together and put out on the street for some period of time, 60 days, 90 days, because again, these often take a period of time to compile responses. I mean, this is usually more than a response where you have a bid on the street for 30 days and you get responses. It could take some period of time for private partners to put together a proposal consistent with whatever design we're ultimately looking to build. So once we get all of those responses, it'll come time for this board to sit down, review all of the proposals, review all of the potential private partners, and see which one of those opportunities would be most advantageous to the district. Again, we don't know at this time how that relationship will be structured. We know that the P3 is an opportunity. It's available to us under state law. Depending on the manner in which that relationship is structured, we know it's consistent with the charter. The key question mark that we have are the impacts on the bonds. And that's what we would ask Ms. Herring and her team to look at.
I'm still, when you throw in the term might, it just doesn't give me the comfort factor that we might be able to do this, and then the people with the the P3s might not like what we're providing for them. You know, I like clarity in our direction, Jake, and so far I don't have it other than we might be able to do this. And so that's one thing. So we're talking about terms that we might be able to put down. What are the terms? That's what I'm looking for. Is that, are we going to put down some terms that the P3 people can't comply with? So I need some more specificity.
We wouldn't. In other words, we wouldn't put, in our bid specifications, we wouldn't put a solicitation on the street that resulted in us conveying property to a private partnership. Or
Well,
to a private
I'm not talking about
Yeah.
that. I'm not, you know, it's like, if we're not going to convey property, how else are these people going to operate? And what terms are we going to say, sit down and to them that say, okay, we're going to go into an agreement with you, but we can't convey the property to you. We may or may not be able to lease the property to you. So where are we going with this? I'm still not totally sure of what we're able to do with the P3.
Well, but there are management agreements, there are concessionaire agreements, there are operator agreements, which are different, legal ways of structuring relationships with private parties that fall short of dedicating or conveying real property. So what the terms of those agreements look like, I'm not sure I can tell you this evening, but there are different tools that we can use to enter into relationships with private parties that will not run afoul of our charter.
So you're confident in saying that that can happen?
Yes.
Okay.
So are you saying though that you want the relationships defined in the RFP, the possible relationships, so,
No,
so the bidders know?
I want to define what we're able to offer. I want people to know what terms that, and we're putting out an RFP. We have to decide it's going to be concession agreement. I mean, we have to decide what we're going to accept.
Right, that's what I mean. So
Yeah.
you want these relationships defined beforehand.
Well, I think they should be. I mean, why would you put in a bid for something that you can't comply with? So we don't tell people they're going to put these bids together, and they may not want to accept our terms.
Mhm.
But if we tell them what our terms are in advance, then we're probably more likely to get an accurate response.
So Jake, what you're saying is that there's a few different options probably that we could define in
Correct.
terms of the relationship between us and the bidders.
That's correct.
Okay, so can we get those?
And
Is that what we're looking for?
Oh, we've previously laid out several different options as it relates to the types of agreements that we could enter into that fall short of conveying real property. Well, I can recirculate that analysis and looking to pull it up now just for reference.
But again, those options need to be looked at in reference to the bond as well.
That's the open question. Correct.
Okay.
That is the key open question.
Gotcha. So that's what they're going to be looking at. And then we can look closer at if they are okay with the bond language or however one you want to say it, then we know what options we can look
I
at.
totally agree, Madam Chair. I'm not
Right.
disagreeing with the investigation and whether or not the PRP would cause a tax event. All I'm saying is that, I want to know that we're going to have clearly an opportunity to do these P3s with clarity on what we're asking these people to do. Okay, this will be a concession agreement. No problem. That's pretty clear. But what are our options just need to be nailed down before we put out the RFP. So these people know that, as Susie said, has probably been doing some investigating. We want to make it. And do we have, you said did I get this right, Jake, where we have to wait until somebody prevents us with a P3 in order for us to put out an RFP?
No, the P3 process contemplates two separate pathways. One is an unsolicited proposal, and one would be a process that's initiated by the district to go out and solicit proposals.
All right, thank you.
My feeling is, and the reason I made this motion is to address your point, Bob. Knowing what the ramifications are of doing a concession agreement or a management agreement. Well, I think this will answer questions as to will there be penalties to us if we do this? And having that information, now we can put out an RFP. Now we can make it known that we'll accept proposals for 3P programs. So I think this all works hand in hand. And I think once we get the information from the bond attorney, we'll be able to better make a decision as to how to go about doing what we want to do.
Just one other observation, if I may, Madam Chair. You know, we may put out a solicitation and you have one private or prospective private partner tell you that a concessionaire agreement is better suited for their proposal, while another one may suggest that a license agreement or a facility management agreement would be better suited for their proposal. So, you know, there are different options, and different prospective proposers or partners may have different ways they envision the process moving forward.
Steve, you need to change your date to January 3rd or 30th, sorry, because the 3rd is a Friday and then Monday is our meeting. So that gives our staff no time to review. So if we could make it January 30th, a Monday, that would be good. Okay. And start the clock now.
Yeah. Let's amend the motion to start the clock now and end it on January 30th.
Yes.
I still have a question. Jacob, do we have to have a different RFP and define what we're looking for a not-for-profit versus a for-profit P3?
You know, as we move forward, we want to think about that and consider it. Arguably no, because I think if you frame the solicitation in such a way that either a for-profit or a non-for-profit could respond, they can detail in their response how they would structure their relationship with the district. Because at the end of the day, the end product may be the same, whether it's through a nonprofit foundation or through a private developer who's looking to build whatever that design might be. So depending on how we structure the RFP, you may not need to have a separate RFP for a nonprofit as opposed to a for-profit.
At the risk of additional discussion, I'm sorry. But, okay, so I get it. We're gonna go to the attorney and ask for these three different types of P3 opportunities to find out if it violates the tax exempt nature of the bonds or not, what that might impact. Yes or no would be. Should we ask the question, there are two other alternatives on this whole process. You know, one is build a golf course and do it out of our own pocket and our own money and you're done. That's what the initial premise was done, or some other recreation facility. That's one option. Okay, we already know we don't have enough money to do all that now. The other option is to turn it over to the city or pay off the bond early. So there's two other options out there. Paying off the bond early, my question would be, is it 16 million? Roughly 16 million is currently there, but you can't just pay it off, you know, without some kind of make whole provision. Correct, Brianne? So,
Yeah, there would be penalties if we paid it off before 2027.
so when is the earliest
2027.
2027? Okay, 5 years away. So, I guess we should know, at least, you know, Brianne, figure out what the cost of those potential penalties are to know what it is. Just know all our options on this whole thing. But I don't know if that's something that we ask them to do or we can do it ourselves.
It's actually 4 years.
It's going to be right here before you know it. At this pace of what we're doing, it's going to be, that's nothing.
As I read it, that the city would have to negotiate any prepayment penalty fees, but I think the bond council would probably weigh in on if they could evaluate what those penalties may be if we paid it off sooner.
I'd imagine it's the interest for the remaining life. It's a 15-year.
I would imagine that would be the answer. We'll look at that.
That's the make whole provision. Okay, so I'm just saying, think through what our options are now. So our options are, and if you want to ask her to do anything else, it's the time to do it. She's going to look at it from a P3 perspective. She's going to give you an answer whether you like it or not. Then you're going to come back and you're going to say, okay, we either have to do it ourselves or we have to go to the city and let them do it. So just know that you have an out option. If you want to give the thing to the city, that's an option. And that may come out of, whoever comes forward to say, here are the different options they'd like to develop with the district and the city to do.
Commissioner Ernst?
Motion.
Would you really like me to? Yeah. We have an amended motion to start the clock now and end on January 30th to have council hire a bond attorney and with a limit of $5,000 and just, we said the date, start now, end on January 30th to review the bond from a P3 perspective. Do you want that put in there?
And just if I may, to the extent that we hear from Ms. Herring that there's any issue with the timing or the cost, we will report back on one of your January meetings.
Ready? Commissioner Ernst? Commissioner Ing? Commissioner Vogelsang? Commissioner Wright?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner.
We'll do approval of payroll and invoices.
Make a motion for approval of payroll and invoices in the amount of $231,414.60.
Joanne?
Commissioner Engel? Commissioner Rollins? Commissioner Vogelsang?
Yes.
Commissioner Wright?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, we'll move on to reports and discussion items. Executive Director Harms.
Commissioners, just a couple of updates. By the end of this month, we're going to have all 18 courts here at the Racket Center resurfaced. The 12 currently lit courts will be retrofitted with the new LED lighting. And then the remaining work for the newly lit courts will occur in March when the new poles are delivered. I don't know if anybody saw it when you were walking up today, but the little free libraries have been installed. And I actually saw it was installed on Friday and I saw it was getting action before I was even leaving on Friday evening. So it's exciting to see those out there, and the staff is going to put together a press release to get that out and announce that. The Gumbo Limbo Tower bids are due back January 3rd, so we look forward to hearing about that. The Red Reef South restroom, which we've been carrying on our budget for a while, is scheduled to be done at the end of December. So we won't see that again for a while. And then myself and our esteemed chair here are going to be presenting to the Federation meeting on the Boca Chica project at their January 3rd meeting, which is the same night as our meeting. I just want to wish everybody the happiest of holidays.
Can it wait till after the meeting? Can it wait till after the meeting? Not on the agenda, so we'll discuss it after the meeting. Okay? Yes.
I think what I would suggest that we reopen public request at the end of the meeting so that member, we've done that before, could allow to address something that was discussed
After future agenda items?
after future agenda items.
Okay,
Thank you.
yep. Everybody okay with that? Yeah? Okay, Steve? Or actually,
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Other than just to wish you all a very Merry Christmas, and Happy Hanukkah. I have nothing to report. So, thank you.
I too would like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and a healthy and prosperous New Year. It's been a pleasure this past year working with all of you, especially when you laugh at my jokes. Thank you.
Craig? Bob?
51 years ago today, my wife and I were exchanging vows in Memphis. And I invited her to the meeting this evening. And she said, let's change our anniversary dinner to tomorrow night so we could eat earlier. So I'm all about that. If you want to know the rest of the story, you'll have to buy the book. So, Madam Chair, and I had a few questions for Brianne, but I had information, or I didn't get to see the workshop, the city's workshop. And so there were some rumors posed to me that said one of the council members suggested that Parks and Rec were unhappy that we had not involved them more in the development of Ocean Breeze. I'm sorry, Ocean Strand. So could you address that? with
Let
a-
let me address that. I actually sat through the workshop meeting. The city council had a very lengthy discussion about their boards and all their advisory boards throughout the city, which includes the Park and Recreation Board. For a very long time, when we had a previous Recreation Services Director, we attempted to get in front of that board. They were not meeting during COVID. Then they went to quarterly meetings. They weren't doing virtual meetings, so it was very hard to get on that schedule. We never could get on their schedule. We finally did get on their schedule when Greg took over as the Recreation Director. Aaron and I had presented to that board. What Deputy Mayor O'Rourke was talking about was she attended that meeting back in April. And at that time, all these boards were frustrated with the lack of meetings. They were frustrated with their lack of involvement. And at that time, they expressed their frustration with the lack of involvement on the Boca Chica plan. Since then, and she was talking about in the past, because all of them attended these meetings a long time ago and it hadn't been back on the workshop, and they were trying to wrap this up about all these advisory boards and getting some better direction for them. That was the point of the conversation. So it wasn't really about us or the Middle Lake project, but that came up as just one example of one of the things that they talked about at that meeting. She went over specifics that every group talked about at their meeting. So since that, obviously, Aaron and I have both presented to them. They are very supportive of the project. They're very excited about the project. I know there was some talk about no pickleball courts, but everybody on council is supportive of pickleball courts. The Parks and Recreation Board, when we spoke to them, everybody was supportive about the project and understood the growing need for pickleball in the city. So I didn't hear I didn't hear it in the same way that it was presented. That's how I heard it. I heard it as a discussion about the advisory boards and some of their issues with meetings and times, and feeling a little bit left out of some of the advice that they were there to give.
Was there any comment about pickleball that we weren't going to build any more pickleball courts? And if so, was that addressed more to the Boca Country Club, or was that addressed to?
Yeah, I think that was about the Boca Country Club. Like when we talked to the Parks and Rec Board, everybody was excited about the pickleball that we're putting out. They're excited to see it. Nobody had any qualms about pickleball. And certainly the city council members were all supportive of the project too, including the Boca Chica project with pickleball. So
Okay.
I haven't heard those issues. I know that they're talking about some pickleball. Maybe the concern is that if they put too few courts, it won't be enough to, like, there's so few courts at El Rio. It's problematic because open play is dominated by higher level. It's just become problematic.
I
There's not
see Erin's grinning, so she knows the complete.
You can't go to El Rio unless you're like a professional pickleball player. I don't know. But yeah, so it's hard for, we have pickleball courts outlined at Hidden Valley, so we can go with our kids and play there. But I guess El Rio is difficult to just go and play as a family or take your kids out to play because it's very intense.
Yeah, put your paddle in the fence and you get.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I guess it's difficult to just go somewhere with your family and play, or as like a beginner player. It's hard to find pickleball courts to go to as
Yeah,
introductory players.
I was hard pressed to believe that somebody members of council would suggest something like that, because with the demand that's out there, I mean, it's one of the most fastest, I heard this about lacrosse, fastest growing sport in the country. And it is. Well, Brianne, thank you. I just had one final thing to suggest so that I can get on to my anniversary. Is that we get a newsletter. I don't know whether everybody else gets the Keep Golf in Boca newsletter, but Harold has done a pretty good job of keeping the neighbors up. And, and I had a conversation with Harold today, and I said, let your constituents know to come to a meeting, phone in, get on the Zoom if they have any questions about what we're doing, because we're trying to maintain transparency with everything we're doing over there. I did send Harold a copy of the complete project. He had an old PowerPoint that we were using, and which I think this new one will answer most of the questions in his email. And I told him that in no small fashion were we concerned about security, which I know all the residents there are, and we would do the absolute best job in making sure that the security to the west part of the property, especially the area, where they're entering into the property over there, and then preventing entrance in from the condominium side of the property. I think that it's it's a good concept, you know, and I think after Harold sees the actual approved document that we had that has an outline of everything, the different points on there. And Harold, if you didn't get it, let me know and I'll resend that to you, but it's got all the different, you know, locations enumerated at the bottom. That's a lot clearer to see, I think, because it covers both east and west side. But thank you for keeping the focus on keeping golf in Boca. We're not neglecting the west side. Pardon? Yeah. We're not neglecting the west side. As you see, we're trying to find a way to get that developed. And I think that with, you know, as they say, learn this, the wheels of the gods grind slowly. And it just seems like that's the way we are. But in the end, it's done right for the neighbors because we're certainly conscious of that. But thank you for your continued efforts. I know they're, you know, you probably don't get many things, but emails that are negative about what's going on. And thank you for not passing those along. But Madam Chair, that's the end of my question. Sorry to take up so much time in this meeting.
Susie. Well, happy anniversary to you and Shirley. She's a lovely lady. She puts up with all your boards that you're on. So, and happy holidays to everyone. I did have a chance to have an exchange with the head of the park rangers after our last meeting where we had that really good presentation by Mr. Stevens and Mr. Beckman. I think it's important that we keep following through with different aspects of city operations. And I think that Mr. Badaloro would be a great resource to help us with security. Although his first reaction was, you know, go to the Boca PD and get there. And he gave us some information about who to contact with the Boca PD. But the Rangers are going to be on property, probably more than the Boca PD, hopefully. And I think he would be a great person to come and present information for all of our parks and at some point in the future. Do you have any plans, Brianne, for any future presentations?
Yes, Greg and I have talked. I mean, we've talked about athletics. We talked about even having the theater come and talk about their season and how they book shows. So I think they just want to do presentations throughout the year of how different aspects of recreation work. So we'll put that on there for sure.
Okay,
I
thank
don't have
you.
anything at the next meeting. Next meeting.
Okay. Well, happy holidays, everybody.
Did you say 51 years? Can't imagine.
It's a lot of give and take, more taking by the other side of the family. But I've learned after 51 years where the line is
And where not to cross it.
and where not to cross and when to keep my mouth shut. Okay, that's right. That was the hardest part.
All right, I have nothing. Happy anniversary, happy holidays, happy new year. And that's it. Oh, yes, sorry. We'll open public comment.
The mic on? This is Harold Chaffee, 6200 North Second Avenue. I heard you talking about the confusion of basically with the 3 Ps. Okay, and you came up with some suggestions of how you can work around the system. My recommendation basically is when you had this problem before, you went to the Attorney General and you asked him for a definition of convey. And he basically sent his response back that you can't do the, I think you should send a letter or send some notice to the Attorney General stating that you're going to do these certain things. Does it violate you? Why are you going to wait until you turn down? You wind up getting a violation. Just ask him basically, would this basically cause a problem with your charter? With the different terms. I can't think of all the terms, I'm sorry. And I'm going to send all those emails I get to you. But that most of them are all positive, believe it or not. I tried to respond to a lot of them, but you know, my wife does all the work. I get the credit, she does all the work. And we've been married 57 years, so.
Wow, congratulations. Yeah.
Well, I guess that's a thank you, I think.
Yeah, I know.
But I've learned to also guess, yes, dear is the word.
That's right.
Yes. And a nod. All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, exactly. That's the idea.
So just as a quick response to that, what we're doing with the attorney is specific to the bond. And that is not something that the Attorney General can weigh in on.
Like a license to sell or take over. There are certain, what were the terms you used? I'm sorry.
All three of the options that were mentioned are clearly options that are currently available either at Boca Chica or anywhere else within the district. We have the ability to license our land. We have the ability to enter into facility management agreements or operator agreements with third parties. We can enter into concessionaire agreements with third parties.
Yeah, but it's the charter that you have to worry about.
Well,
That's- whether it works with
each
the
of those options are consistent with our charter. There's
Okay.
because not one of those options results in a conveyance or a dedication of real property. It's the impact of the bonds, which are unique to this particular transaction, that the Attorney General's office would not weigh in on.
All right, thank you.
You guys have officer selection at the next meeting. So that's one agenda item that you'll see. We're gonna have a discussion about our CRA contribution, and then we have Mr. David Ogman, who Commissioner Engel asked to come and speak at our meeting. So he'll be on the agenda, and then we should have the work order from Miller Lake for the design of the facilities on the east side. Look at.
Adjourn.
Hey, Joy.
Ernst, Commissioner Engel. Commissioner Vogelsang,
Yes.
Commissioner Ray.
Yes.
Motion passed.